Hey guys, what is up? It is Bibzuda7 here again, and welcome to another RuneScape 3 video here today. In this video, I'm going to be going over the Road Ahead or Roadmap Extended. What did they call it? They called it RuneScape Ahead Extended, I think. I'm going to be going over the live stream that they did yesterday, well, this might go up on like Sunday technically, but they did a live stream on Friday where they discussed the roadmap in more detail, and additionally had 3 panels which discussed some other things. But yeah, there was a lot of new information brought out with this, so I figured it would be good to make a video to cover it, following up on my original video covering the roadmap, which if you haven't seen that, I would recommend checking that out. Again, I'm just going to be doing mining here at the new Daemonheim ores, so if you are if you're just listening in the background, you should be all good. Just listen while you play. That's normally how I structure these videos to be consumed. Anyway, we first started off the stream with a discussion with Mod Marcus, or Marcos. I don't know which it is, but he's the new, well, not super new anymore at this point, the executive producer for RuneScape and also for Old School. I think he's doing both right now. But all I can say is that he is pretty much the GOAT as far as I can tell, because it was when he came over to RS3 that everything started to turn around. Back in April, May-ish of this year, I think is when you would say that happened. So he clearly is doing something very right in terms of the direction he's taking the game. Obviously, the developers and all the JMods behind the content and stuff are doing fantastic jobs as well. But his influence has really improved things, especially on the communication front and as well on the planning front, it does seem, and potentially on the execution front as well. I mean, I don't know, because this is the first time I can even remember where we've had this type of a structured roadmap, and it's so far being followed and content is being released as presented on the roadmap. So big shout out to him. I mean, obviously, all of Jagex has been doing a great job, as I said, but it seems like he's done something right for the team here. So I wanted to shout that out. Also, for a lot of these discussions, I'm not going to be going over everything that was said, just the major points that I wanted to expand on further. I would highly recommend, if you're interested and want to know more, to watch the stream yourself. It is 3 hours long, but I mean, it's great to hear a lot of different perspectives on the game from the developers. And it, there's a few things in there that I won't be covering exactly. Like for the skilling panel, I didn't really hear a whole ton of stuff that was like super important and impactful. It was still cool to hear their thoughts on how they approach skilling design and things like that. But a lot of the current skilling updates that are in the future are the ones that are coming next year. And a lot of the answers to the questions asked around those was, we're not sure yet. It's going to be a future discussion, basically because those updates are too far away for them to say anything super concrete. Anyway, yeah, so there's only a couple things I put down for the Marcus section, other than the fact that he's seemingly doing a really good job turning around the ship here. They are apparently planning or considering, I'm not sure if they've started it yet or not, but considering looking to make an exposed API and the ability for people to make plugins like Old School. If you've ever played Old School, chances are you used RuneLite, which is the client that you can download and use plugins with. And overall, they're pretty useful, and a lot of people say they wouldn't even play Old School without the RuneLite plugins, which I think is, kind of fair. It's hard to even remember exactly what plugins do what things for you when you mostly play with them on. But one of the plugins that I like quite a lot is the ability to right click and mark a tile. So if I were standing here and I wanted to remember this spot and come stand here again for some reason later, I could right click or like shift right click and click mark the tile, and it would be marked with like a little black square around it. That can be kind of helpful for certain bosses on knowing exactly where you want to stand, and just a nice little tool there. That one is probably the main one that I just think of when I hear about the plugins. But there's also the quest helper, One of the ones for the GE is really nice. For if you have I think it's part of the quest helper, but there's like just a button you can click, and then you like get a whole list of all the items you need for the quest, and that like lets you put them into the GE really quickly and easily. A lot of cool stuff that has potential to be useful with plugins. So that would be really cool if that's something they could do eventually, but that is not on the roadmap or coming potentially at all. It's just he mentioned that they are maybe looking into it, considering the fact that that's never been mentioned before by them, as far as I know. It is pretty cool. And yeah, he also said that MTX is going to become more of a dialogue after the recent survey. Apparently, there's going to be a news post or some sort of blog post from Mod Pips in the coming week or two that's going to start that dialogue. And that's pretty interesting because there's pretty much never been any sort of player feedback or input requested or accepted or acted on as far as MTX is concerned for the most part. So it'll be really good to see if they're actually going to consider what people ask for, aside from, I mean, I'm not expecting them to be removing any MTX at this point, but I don't know. I'm interested to see how that dialogue goes, and it's obviously an improvement from the dead silence of the past. So that was Marcus's section. But I mean, there was a bunch of other stuff that was discussed, but those were the main ones that I wanted to touch on. So very, very cool. And he seems like he's been a great influence on the game. Next up, there was a whole section discussing stuff about the skilling boss, which I am really looking forward to. That is the Gates of Elidinus. They still said on the stream Elidnus. I'm not sure if I'm wrong, but that's what it's spelled, is Elidinus. I don't know. Actually, let me go to the wiki right now. You know what? We're gonna figure this out, folks. RS Elidinus. Yeah, it's Elidinis. So there's an I in between the D and the N. Elidinus. I don't have a little pronunciation thing on here, but I don't know. Regardless, that's the skilling boss, and that is they reconfirmed the release date, which was already in the blog post of the roadmap. The quest, Ode to the Devourer, or Ode to whatever it's called exactly, something like that, is coming on September 16th, and then a week later, the skilling boss is dropping properly on September 23rd. However, they also told us that the quest will have a tutorial version of the skilling boss. So that was very surprising to hear, honestly. So you're going to have the ability to, I'm not sure if this is going to be repeatable, but you're going to have the ability to partially learn the skilling boss the week prior to its release. So that is very, very interesting. I'm curious to see how that plays out. Again, mainly the most interesting thing would be, is it repeatable? I feel like it probably won't be, because if it were, why not just release the boss then and there? I don't know, but that is a very interesting point that they mentioned. They also talked about the unique drops, which there are quite a few. They confirmed the skilling offhands. There's going to be 2 that the boss drops, and one of them is going to be for rune crafting, and the other one for divination. So I'm very interested to see what these effects are going to be on these skilling offhands. I think the rune crafting one could maybe be very nice to have. Unfortunately, I just recently crafted a bunch of necrotic runes on my Iron Man, so I'm going to be a little bit sad if I would have rather done that with all of these, but hey, I'm definitely going to be doing more in the future eventually. It was also said that there is going to be a couple new amulets. Not sure if that just means 2 or more or anything about them, but there's going to be new amulets, at least more than one. Interesting. A new ring. There was no mention of effects at all or even anything like that. And a new scripture, like a god book for Elidinus. So who knows what that'll do? Obviously, the Croesus one gives you clues while skilling. So it's probably going to be something that does something for skilling, I would assume. Obviously, skilling boss, but yeah, overall that's pretty cool. There's no armor set. Maybe the amulets or ring will be combat potential, but Maybe probably, I mean, I feel like amulets are pretty tough to make worthy of anything in combat, considering the EOF is so powerful. So the amulets are probably going to be skilling. The ring probably also. I don't really know. But either way, I think it sounds cool. I'm also honestly really interested to see what the common drops are, because Crosis had a lot of good common drops that it brought into the game that weren't super accessible elsewhere, like red spider's eggs, Mortmire fungus, and cockatrice eggs, I think, are the three that come to mind immediately. So I'm curious to see what this boss will drop. I think it's almost a guarantee that it drops Primal Stone Spirits. That's my only thought. They also confirmed the skills that are going to be needed for the boss. I don't know if they'd done this before, but now we do know for sure. There's going to be mining, agility, divination, and crafting. So a very interesting set of skills there. Mainly agility stands out to me as something that's going to be strange, considering at Crosis, of course, it's hunter, mining, woodcutting, fishing, all gathering skills. Then in this one, you have mining, divination, gathering skills, crafting, a production skill. I guess Crosis also has construction. But then agility is kind of like, what's going to be involved there? But we'll see. And that is interesting as well, of course, because we just had the 110 mining and smithing update. So I'm going to try and maybe work on getting 110 mining in my spare time when I'm not doing bossing, or, when I want to AFK, basically. Try and work on getting 110 mining before the update so I can be at my best power at the boss. But yeah, that's pretty cool. It was also said by Mod Ramen that it is a bit more like a real boss than Crosis, where he said there's like reactionary mechanics. Like at Crosis, if you've done any amount of it, you probably have the Sus Alert Alt-1 plugin, which is extremely useful at Crosis, and it warns you when mechanics are coming that you need to avoid. And for the most part, you can pretty quickly get into a bit of an autopilot mode at Crosis. And I like Crosis. I do enjoy doing it. I'm not a big fan of having to get a group of 4, but still, it is a fun encounter, even with the rather monotonous way that it ends up playing. I still excuse me, I still enjoy doing the content. But you are going to be taking damage in this instead of draining stats. Although I believe it wasn't said here, but I think it was said before that deaths will be safe. Like at Crosis, you're not going to actually die and lose your stuff or whatever. But that sounds good to me. There's also apparently ways that you can choose to make the boss harder, but it will then be completed faster, or you can take an easier but slower approach, which sounds fantastic to me. I think that's a really, really good idea to allow for people who want to be more intense and more engaged to have that ability to put in the extra effort for a faster kill. That sounds really good. I'm curious to see what those differences are. And then additionally, they confirmed that there isn't any sort of contribution system. You are able to, it is designed with solo as a priority, I believe they said. They said that they mostly test things in group, but they kept reminding themselves, solo, this is a solo boss, we want to be solo. Therefore, solo is definitely going to be the focus, but even still, if you want to do it in a group, you can do it with up to 10 people, I think is what it was said. And there's no contribution system. If you are contributing in the fight and doing the boss, then you will get a drop. That is, I believe, what they said. And one thing that they specifically mentioned is they didn't like the part with Crosis where people end up waiting rather than completing it as fast as possible in order to get the max contribution, which is another thing that's not good with Crosis. So I'm glad they're not doing the contribution system. It was even said we didn't need it. It's needlessly complicated. And I do agree with that with Crosis as well. Although with Crosis, I think it is like completely massable. I don't know if there's even a limit on the number of players. Maybe there's like 50 or something, but that's a good reason for it to have that contribution system, I suppose, so people can't just completely leech. And that's it for the skilling boss. So yeah, I am really, really excited for that. I will be making definitely videos on it, maybe a day one guide like I used to do, but I am extremely excited for the release of that next month. Next up, we had Group Iron with Timbo by himself on the couch. I don't know who else is working on it, but he was the spokesperson for the Group Iron Man update. And there was a few important points that he brought up in here. One of them being that competitive Group Ironman cannot do Wilderness Flash events, which is a pretty big thing to not have access to. Now, when I've started my Ironman accounts, that was prior to Wilderness Flash events being out. But as I understand it, nowadays on a new Iron, you want to start doing the skilling versions of Wilderness Flash events as soon as possible because they are super duper strong in terms of the rewards. Even the non-special event rewards with just the wild sack give really great stuff, really good alkables, things like Infernal Ashes, the Black Salamanders for invention components. A lot of great stuff to get on an Ironman early on, but those aren't going to be available for competitive Group Ironman, which makes sense because it's almost, maybe for like the Flash events that are in between the special ones, but it's very, very unlikely in general that you would end up getting an event that only your group is participating in. So why would, it shouldn't necessarily be available since you're doing it with other people. The only thing I hope is that they maybe give some other way to get the portable obelisk and the dark onyx core. Those are the two unique rewards from Wilderness Flash events. So I would appreciate it if those were somehow accessible in some other way. Maybe they won't be. I mean, it's not like they're essential items for anything really, but it would be nice to still have the ability to get them in some other way. However, it seems like in general, their approach is to not do that with other pieces of content. So I wouldn't be expecting it. Maybe later on down the line, I don't know. Additionally, one thing he mentioned that was very surprising to me, but also a fantastic thing to do is all Group Ironmen will have all auras available immediately day one of their account. So that is pretty significant. Obviously, right now with a new account, you have to spend quite a lot of time waiting for loyalty points to build up in order to get a lot of the auras in the game. Now, they did remove a few of the combat-focused ones and add them to War's Retreat, but that is not nearly a majority of the auras you want to use. They did this because they wanted it to be a fair and level playing ground for the high scores, and I think that's a great reason, but that's a very, very nice thing to know. Auras immediately available, so you can definitely start using those right away to get the maximum efficiency. Also, they showed off the group or the Iron Man Island that is going to be, similar to old school's version, where that's where you go after the tutorial to make your groups and stuff. It looks fantastic. The environment looks really, really good. And there's a nice, cool, big statue in the middle that is going to commemorate Group Iron Man firsts, kind of like the one that there already exists for regular Iron Man. So that's really, really cool. It definitely looks very nice. Now, the unfortunate downside that I have been complaining about with Group Iron is that Hardcore is not going to be available on launch, which I still don't understand exactly why. Apparently, there's some complicated reason. Timbo wasn't too specific on it, but he said that. But then he kept saying that it's probably not going to be available for launch. He seemed to be very reluctant to say it won't be available. I don't know why. I would rather him just say it's not going to be available on launch, but we'll do it later, rather than saying probably it won't be available on launch. But so I'm just going to still assume that that's a definitely not happening. But that is worth noting that it was asked about, so they did address it slightly. And lastly, this might have already been mentioned, but boss instances will be free on competitive Group Ironman. I don't know about regular because they can't do bosses with other people, so they will need to be using their own instances. I guess I don't know. Sounds good to me. Boss instances having a cost has always been a bit annoying in general, but that will no longer be the case with these Group Irons. So those were the two updates that had their own sections of the panel, which was nice, or of the live stream, which was nice to get more detail on. Then they had the lore panel, which was interesting to listen to. The Elemental Workshop quest series was mentioned by Mod Jack, I believe. I literally would die of happiness if that quest series got a new quest in it. But he basically said, like, it's not like we can really force someone to work on the Elemental Workshop quest series. Like the developer basically has to be someone who wants to make like a devilish, fiendish puzzle. And if they don't want to do that, the quest series isn't really going to work out. So seems like, unfortunately, nobody at Jagex is in that sort of mood, and we're not going to be getting any expansion to that quest chain anytime soon. But I'm glad at least it is in the, in their mind. If someone did come up who said, I want to make a crazy town puzzle, they'll hand them straight to Elemental Workshop. So can't, I will continue holding out hope that quest line will someday get more. But yeah, they talked about a lot about how we're moving forward with the desert quests in the roadmap and everything like that, and how it's going to tie into things, and just a lot of general lore related stuff, which was interesting again to listen to, but there weren't any big notable points that I had written down that I wanted to discuss in this video necessarily. But I'm really looking forward to the desert quests and whatever else comes along with those. And so it was a good panel, but just nothing I noted down. Similarly, for the skilling panel, I didn't really have much to say. As I said in the beginning of the video, a lot of the stuff that is on the roadmap for skilling is a bit of a ways off. They didn't really talk much about fletching and woodcutting, honestly. But importantly, the one thing they did focus on and ensure was clear, with these 110 updates, they're not really looking to rebalance or rework the skills pretty much in any way. They're just adding the new skill cap and some new content to fill in between those levels. So that is important to note. That's what I had already assumed. And I guess maybe that's, I don't know, that makes sense to me. That seems fine. But I don't know, maybe some people don't agree. I think the mining and smithing update was perfectly good, perfectly fine. The only issue I have with it is the fact that the Masterwork two-hand doesn't have some sort of passive or special effect. I think that definitely should exist, but otherwise, everything else I think is perfectly fine. Primal armor not being good for wearing for combat, I don't really care about. So I think they did a good job with it, and I'm looking forward to the other skills as well. Also, one other thing that I just thought of and I remembered that Mod Jack mentioned about runecrafting 110 is a lot of people would assume with runecrafting going to 110, there's going to be a new rune. But he said there's not really a need for a new rune in the game right now, which, I mean, kind of makes some sense if you think about it. Like, with a new rune, you'd probably need like new spells or things to use that rune. Otherwise, what's it going to be? So that kind of makes some sense to me. But I think maybe something they could do that would be maybe kind of cool is some kind of new combination rune that is like for some sort of the catalytic runes. Maybe that could be cool. I don't know. Probably not. Combination runes, I don't know. That was just a random thought that I had, but so potentially not going to be a new rune available, but who knows? And then, what content is going to be added? We know there's going to be the magic weapons available, but how are those going to be made? I don't know. He also mentioned randomly like something like making divination energy, the thing that makes runes instead of essence, which that was just like a random offhand thing that he said is like something he's thought about before. That was a curious thing he mentioned. But yeah, that's it for the skilling panel for the most part. Again, a lot of interesting information and stuff they talked about, but no big points that I wanted to talk about here exactly. And now we move on to the combat panel, which I do have quite a few notes for. And this was a great panel. I mean, Mod Ryan, Ramen, and Sponge are great. They always give great information, and you can tell they're really passionate and care a lot about the game and the combat system and want what's best for the players in the game in general. So I always appreciate hearing them give their thoughts. First of all, they talked quite a bit about the combat mastery achievements, and I didn't really think I could get more excited for them than I already was, but Mod Ryan really upped the ante and made me super excited for these to come out because they are not holding back, it sounds like, on these at all. Something I was maybe thinking that would be maybe a concern is they won't make them difficult enough at the top end. But they sure seemed like they are going to be making them difficult enough. One thing that he mentioned specifically, although it's not necessarily going to be one of them, but he said people are already doing challenges for themselves, like a 200 kill streak at 4K Enrage Arch Glacier, which, I mean, not a lot of people can do that. It's not something I've ever tried. See, that's the thing with things like that. I wouldn't really try and do that without there being something like an achievement to go for and show off that I did it or reward me in some way. But that's really hard, like 4K Enrage Arch Glacier is very difficult. So a 200 kill streak at that would obviously be extremely hard. But that was one of the examples he gave for a Grandmaster level achievement. So that is amazing. And it just overall, it really sounds like they're thinking through it very well, looking at old school for inspiration and other things. He said that they will be very top heavy. There's going to be more achievements in Grandmaster than any of the other tiers. He said specifically, this is a quote from him, if you see someone who has the Grandmaster tier completed, you'll think, holy shit, they're Grandmaster. That's what he actually said on the live stream, which I thought was pretty funny. So just like, it's going to be that level of prestige and skill expression that it's going to require to get these done. He also mentioned for a potential version of a Grandmaster achievement would be something similar to like a golden daredevil at raids, which I think doesn't currently exist. But basically it would be something like for a Grandmaster, you have to do all of the easy through elite achievements in one boss encounter. So that's a cool idea as well. That could be pretty difficult depending on what all those are. One thing he said that I really liked, and I hope that they go ahead with, was he thinks that one of the best things they can do is design some achievements that they're not even sure are possible and throw them into Grandmaster. I think they definitely should do that because from everything I've ever seen about the game, Jagex is constantly underestimating how insane people are at the game and at the combat system. So I would love to see what sorts of things they come up with if they go down that route. It sounds so cool. I mean, it just sounds like that everything that they're thinking about for this update are the things that I want. Now, obviously on this channel and in general, I haven't really flexed my PVM skill all that much, but I'd like to think I'm pretty good at PVM. And if I wanted to, I feel like I could be extremely good at the top, be one of the top. I mean, maybe not one of the top in the game, but like I could be really, really good if I had the motivation to put in the time. Like right now, I don't really have any intrinsic motivation to go out and, like I said, be doing a 400 or a 4K Enrage Glacier full kill streak or anything like that. But I feel like that's something I could eventually get the skill to do. So having things that are really difficult and maybe even currently out of my wheelhouse and not in my skill range to go for is something I really am looking forward to, because that's part of the reason why I play hardcore, is to like test my abilities and make sure that, am I really good enough to not die and stuff like that. So going for these on this account is going to be so fun. Oh my God. I absolutely cannot wait for the combat mastery achievements. I'm so looking forward to hearing more about them as they get closer and maybe hearing some of the actual achievements in the game. So excited. Last few things are about some of the actually very soon to come out updates, including the new Slayer creature is actually going to be a new Scabarite. So sticking with the desert theme of late, they're going to be having that as the new Slayer creature that drops the the Necromancy Slayer helm attachment. So that's pretty cool. They didn't mention anything about the level requirement to kill it or anything like that. So that remains to be seen. I mean, if we can assume anything from the current ones that are for magic and range, those are like 70s for those. So maybe it'll be similar. I don't know. I doubt it's going to be any big new game breaking thing. And then additionally, they talked briefly about the fourth necromancy conjure, the Phantom Guardian, and they did confirm that it's focused around being defensive, which I was surprised to hear because, well, I mean, necromancy is already really good damage, and it's also really good sustain. So either one they added on to was going to be a big, boost to its already great strengths. But I'm really curious to see what it actually does. The name of it kind of makes me think maybe it'll act like a mini hellhound and just like siphon off like 5% to maybe 3% of the damage that you take or something like that. I don't know. They also didn't say anything about how you're going to get it, so I'm still assuming it's just going to be added to the talent tree in some way. But yeah, that's coming out just in a couple weeks now, so I'm really looking forward to seeing all the details about what that does. And then lastly, they touched briefly on the Amascut, however you say it, the new boss that's coming next year. Then they did underline the fact that in the news post about the roadmap, it does say endgame boss. So good to know that that actually does mean something. Mod Ramen said they are definitely going to be making sure the telegraphing is up to par with how it is at the Sanctum, which I think is fantastic. The Sanctum is one of the best PVM content updates in recent years, so I'm really looking forward to this new one as well. And then they talked a little bit about the difficulty level of it and how to make it hard for people who are great at the game while also being accessible. And they gave this weird example, which I guess is done in other games that I've never heard of this as an idea, and it seems strange to me, but they said that they could potentially explore taking away some of your toolkit. I think he said the example of vuln bombs or some random stuff like that. Defining a set of rules for the encounter that makes it really difficult and makes it so that people even at the higher end are going to struggle with it for maybe the first week of the release and then change the difficulty of it. So I don't know. That seems kind of weird. Like from my perspective, I would feel a little bit sad if I didn't get to experience the harder version of it if I wasn't available for that week for whatever reason. And then additionally, I don't know, it just seems like a strange approach, but maybe that's a standard thing in other games. It would be curious to see how they implement it. Like maybe, I feel like they kind of mentioned it almost like this, like maybe if Nakatra and the Sanctum came out, and for the first week it was only doable in hard mode or something, like that would kind of be interesting, although that boss isn't really to the level of difficulty that would make that an extremely tough challenge. But still, I'm really curious to hear more about that if that's the direction they go. Mod Ramen mentioned that they enjoyed the race to the first Inferno completion on old school, flicking between streams to see as someone else got close to the end and then died, you would switch to someone else. Which I think is cool. I remember something similar for Virago release because back when that came out, everybody sucked massively at the game and didn't know how to kill it, and there was a big race to get the first kill. So I think that would be a really cool thing to have, but I'm not sure if that approach makes a lot of sense. But we'll see. It seems a little strange to me, but either way, I'm really looking forward to the Amascut boss, no matter how they do it, since it sounds like they're going down a good path with bosses. They also said, or they mentioned again, that they have made the request to make changes to Vorkath, but that still has to be like approved or whatever by management or whoever. So I'm hoping that gets approved because Vorkath is terrible right now, and I think really needs some changes to make it a bearable boss. And that is it. That is the short recap for the full 3-hour stream. If this stuff interests you, I highly recommend you watch the whole thing, as there are little nuggets and random things of information sprinkled throughout that I didn't fully cover here. But I hope this, if you didn't want to watch it or didn't want to read the long recap, I hope this helped you guys out in learning more about what is to come in a bit more detail on that RuneScape ahead. I am really appreciating the additional communication by Jagex, and I am looking forward to continuing to make more regular videos. I will be making a video this Monday, as long as there's like something to discuss in a patch note or whatever. But I'll also have a new hardcore video coming up pretty soon. And yeah, we're back, baby. We are back to the grind, back to the videos. So yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What update are you looking forward to the most? And peace out.